I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Andrew Malcom. I am currently the Vice President of Product Marketing for HP Enterprise Commercial Mobility, which is a whole lot of words. But I really wanted to talk today about a much more well-known product called Skype, where I was the head of marketing and revenue for a couple of years, right before and after our acquisition by Microsoft. And what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit today about how we take all of the great products that everybody's building out there and talking about in each of these great components, the awesome design, the secure ways, and actually translate them into business results. Much like Marty and Mary were talking about earlier today, I don't believe that chasing the almighty dollar is the best way to capture it, but I do truly enjoy the idea of making money. I am a nice, wonderful money-grubbing guy. So I'd like to start with the personal anecdote that as I was leaving for college about 20 years ago, my mother told me that I should major in exactly what I loved the most at the time, which turned out at the time I thought to be classics and ancient political theory. It's not the easiest thing to translate into technology, and unfortunately, 40-year-old me doesn't really love the same things that 18-year-old me did. So instead of getting to build those great products that you guys get to build, what I try to do is build awesome businesses around them. So what I love to do today to get started is to kind of talk about what I think some of those components are by asking you a simple question about a 1990s ad. You can tell it's the 90s because his hair is exactly what the 90210 hairstyle was before the remake. So if only technology were working right now, oh, it is. I'd love to do a quick vote. What do we think this advertisement was actually for? I'm going to give you 4 options. Do we think it's for the shaving cream that he's using there? Do we think it's for the razor that he's actually employing? Do we think it's for the razor blades hitting his face? Or do we think it's the experience of manscaping? Since we're not just about products, we're about user experience here. So if you actually take out your cell phone, not to turn it off, but to use it, and vote really quickly, we can see what the room thinks about. So you have to text the code next to the option to the number 22333. It's much more interesting if everybody votes. Otherwise, it's one guy. And as we just learned in experimentation, it takes more than that to know. I always love that manscaping makes a last-minute charge every time. All right, we're getting pretty close. So from the audience and you guys out there, the guy who voted for shaving cream, why do you think it's shaving cream? It's okay. There's no judgment. Okay, one of the 2 people who voted for shaving cream.
Because that was what was on his face.
Pretty,
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at shaving cream.
Pretty prominent, right? You can't really do it. It enhances the experience. It's probably pretty high margin. So of the people who voted for razor, overwhelmingly, 10. Why did you say it was the razor? I mean, that's what he's doing, right? You can't do that. You can't shave without the razor right now. Maybe we can laser them later, but not in the 1990s. How about the people who voted for razor blades? It's where they make all their money. And anybody but want to defend manscaping, which is always just entertaining? Exactly. It is where they make all of their money. How much of that money do you think they actually make from razor blades? If the lifetime value of somebody who acquires a razor is somewhere close to $1,000, they give you those razors. Everybody's gotten one in the mail, I'll bet. If you haven't, you've done an incredible job staying off of every marketing list ever, because they're giving you those razors because they make all the money off the razor blades. And don't get me wrong, they make some money off the shaving cream too. But what's the difference between selling a razor and selling those razor blades? So the product on the left was the very beginning of disposable razors, right? Every time one ran out, everybody who went to the store had the opportunity to decide to buy that razor again or not to buy that razor again. The products on the right, every time that those run out, do you have the option to go switch? What does it take to actually switch between the Mach 3 or the Gillette Fusion and the Schick? You actually have to go buy like a $30 razor that they sent you in the mail for free. And to me, this is the difference between thinking about our lives in terms of products and the lives in terms of businesses that we can build around those products. We're still delivering the best user experience we can, the smoothest face with the least pain, but we're thinking about how we can do that in a systemic way that allows us to capture value and still deliver the user experience that we expect. So even if you just thought about it in the most illustrative, simple math terms that are out there, every time they send you one of those razors in the mail, and they do so every time there's a new release, basically, of their razors, right? Which is weird to think about razors in release terms. But every time you'll get a new one. I still get them today, and I think I've been shaving for a while now, at least as far as my face tells me. If 1 out of 5 of us converts to that razor, or even the upsell, the new margin that they'll make out of the new set of razor blades will recoup that investment tenfold for them. And then they get the added benefit of including the shaving cream as a kind of capper on top of all of that money. But this is the difference between thinking about each one of those as discrete products that we sell to people and those as a system that we put together to build a true business. How big is the impact of thinking about things in those terms versus other terms? If you just look at the acquisition dollars spent to acquire something that we probably think is pretty simple in the land of razor blades, or what Gillette does, they were purchased for more than 8 times any of the major technology investments that we've seen around Motorola or Nokia. I include WhatsApp there just out of giggles because I'm not really sure how you compare that to razor blades. There's no manufacturing. But still more than 2x, almost 3x what WhatsApp was able to be acquired for. So you can take this thinking and apply it to something as boring as razor blades and still create incredible financial value by delivering that overall experience to somebody. So I think the question for us is going to be, how do we go about instilling that type of thinking in our teams and our organizations? The problem with all of these product ideas and product-centric thinking as a standalone concept is that, as Marty said, the life cycle of products has shortened to the point that we measure them in days, not in years. So, 20 years ago, when you bought a couch or you bought a car, you were thinking about a product purchase that you were making for 8 to 15 years in a lot of cases, things that were enduring. And as we've advanced in technology and manufacturing and so forth, we saw the cell phone life cycle emerge where everything was 2 years. You can almost guarantee an upgrade cycle of 2 years on almost any product. But now, with distribution basically being all through app stores, everything being a software concept and a web concept, the life cycle, in my opinion, is less than a year for almost anything that you're able to do right now. How frequently are you all upgrading your cell phones now versus when you were locked into contracts 2 years ago? Even the cell phone guys are trying to get us out of that thinking. And as product people, we have to react to that by thinking about how we're going to manage through the complexity that comes with building every one of those new products, which requires an incredible investment of R&D and thinking to make that possible. The great news is, if you do employ just a pure product-based thinking and you get it right, you get blockbuster financial returns. Does everybody remember when the Wii first came out from Nintendo? Sort of the first really interactive video game. If you're, a nerd and as old as I am, you really still prefer the 16-bit 1984 version of Mario. But it was an amazing thing, and Nintendo experienced this incredible resurgence as they moved to the forefront of video gaming ahead of everybody else in Xbox. But what happens when they can't come up with the next product? All the way back down to below where they were at the point. So if you had invested $1 in Nintendo in 2004 and smart enough to sell it in 2007, you make 8 times your money. If you hold out hoping that the next version of the product is the winner, you end up right back where you were, which in inflation terms is going to be basically nothing. So they've built an incredible product but haven't sustained financial value out of it. In contrast, one of the worst products I've ever experienced in my life has returned like 4 to 5 times $1 of investment that somebody put to work back in 2004. I don't really entirely know why this is, other than the fact that I think that they cracked a system of putting things together, both from a business model standpoint of the subscription thinking, as well as cracking the regulatory impediments for others to be quick followers of their product, all to produce this unbelievable ability to charge me $89 for internet every month while I still buy DirecTV from somebody else so I can get the NFL package. So it's not just about the product that will make us successful, but it's also just not about any one element of our business that will make us successful. We've seen this repeat itself over and over again. The product alone is simply not enough, as we were understanding before. There was a social network before Facebook. Does anybody still have a MySpace account? I mean, I guess Rupert Murdoch must, but I'm really curious what he's doing on there. How about Plaxo? I got a notice from Plaxo the other day that somebody that was my boss in like the late 1990s had a birthday. I was like, well, I guess somebody's still on there. But LinkedIn obviously dominates that space. And even going way back to the days of Betamax versus VHS, there was a better technology, Linux versus Windows. But none of those ended up winning out because I don't think they were capable of thinking about taking their product and building the overall system around it that allowed them to become a successful business. So let's do another quick vote. We can do this one by hands or whatnot. But if you put two competing products up there based on the features alone of what we know about them, two VoIP products, as Mary mentioned, the disruptive concept of VoIP. On a feature basis, one of them offers unlimited group-based communication. The other one charges you a premium subscription for that. If you want to use the VoIP to call a PSTN-based landline number, one is free for all US calling. The other one charges you 3 cents a minute. When you sign up, there's one that actually allows you to integrate all of your address books so that you immediately have your contact list populated. The other one, you have to go one by one in order to add them. And the final side of things is one is entirely web-based and one is a client-based world. If you saw just that list of information, which of those would you think is the most successful product? The first one, right? The one on the left is Google Hangouts, which had about 100 million users last month. The one on the right is Skype, which has about 400 million users a month right now. You can't succeed on the feature set alone. It's about putting those things together in a context of greater capabilities to make those successful. So I want to take a second and talk about Skype because having lived it for 4.5 years, it's pretty much the thing that I am most passionate that could be a disruptive type of thinking in the future. So I asked this question again to all of you, and I'd love to hear your ideas, but do you think Skype is a great product? Okay. Did you think Skype was a great product in 2008? Pretty great back in 2008, right? I think it actually achieved incredible success as far as 30% of all international calling minutes are done on Skype. It's the largest telco in the world by like a factor of 6. More than 2 billion minutes today have been spent talking on Skype alone, and almost 30% of the connected devices in the world have downloaded Skype. More than 1.4 billion downloads over the course of its life. Do you think Skype is a great business? So undeniably disruptive, right? Do you think Skype's a great business? Anybody a big enough nerd to have read the S1 like I did when they were going to file? How does Skype make money? As the guy who ran revenue at Skype, this was exactly my problem, I think. So Skype charges for PSTN-based termination, right? Just like any other telco, international long-distance calling. About $1 billion at our peak we were charging in terms of international long-distance minutes. What happens when more and more people get on Skype so that they're there every day? Do you need to call a phone still from Skype? No. Everybody's already on Skype. Skype to Skype is free. This is the biggest thing that we didn't think through at the beginning. And this is what I mean by phase 2. So if you haven't had a chance, this is the best 35 seconds of the presentation and my life.
This is where all our work is done. So what are you going to do with all these underpants that you steal? Collecting underpants is just phase 1. Phase 1, collect underpants. So what's phase 2? Hey, what's phase 2? Phase 1, we collect underpants. Yeah, but what about phase 2? Well, phase 3 is profit. Get it?
I don't get it.
You see, phase 1, collect underpants. Phase 2,
So
phase 3, profit.
I get it.
it gets obscene from there, but I think you probably get the point. So as I try to build businesses around technology, I find that my life exists in phase 2. And more times than not, I get involved in companies, whether they're startups or even large companies now, when they've developed a piece of technology that they think is really cool, but they have no idea what phase 2 is going to be. Skype originated as a file sharing program called Kazaa, which you may or may not remember many years ago when we were in the world of Napster. So they had built an incredible ability to map out every internet connection in the world and find the most efficient way between 2 points. But they had no idea what they were going to do to make a business out of that. So one day after it had been sold to eBay, somebody was like, I think I can make it route into the IP network. Well, we get a big bonus if we get $300 million by the end of the year in revenue. Let's try that tonight. One night, somebody built in international long-distance calling, and that became the business model. But that business model itself obviously is flawed and problematic, and we needed to think through other ways to go about those things. And really, it's the difference between thinking through a great product and a great business. So I think all of us in the room can probably list out a number of attributes about great products. But really, I want to talk about what is the follow-on question you have to ask yourself to ensure that it becomes a great business. So we already talked about how great products solve problems for customers. Great businesses solve problems that their users pay for. Too bad we didn't charge for video calling on Skype originally, right? I think great products obviously deliver a seamless user experience. We've heard entire talks about how to create great user experience teams. Great businesses build an organizational structure to support that experience end to end. Great products uniquely stand apart from their customers. Obviously, you have to do things a little bit differently to be the dominant player in any market. Great businesses do so in a way that you can't replicate. If we think about the iPhone, right? Great product. Is the S5 really that different of a product? Probably not. Why is the reason that everybody keeps coming back to Apple to buy the next version of the iPhone? iTunes, branding, the Apple Store relationship, all of those things, or the IP protection that goes along with some piece of software that allows others to think about doing it but not be able to. And I think finally, certainly great products are always widely adopted, but I think great businesses are widely adopted without having to invest billions of dollars to get them to scale. Last but certainly not least, I think great products include the support to ensure the success of a user adopting it, and great businesses do that in a way to build an ongoing relationship. If you're in a transaction-based business where you've built a piece of software, and you see this over and over again in almost any industry right now, that you think we can exist in a license and maintenance type enterprise license agreement around software, or you think that you can continuously convince a person to buy the next iteration of your piece of hardware, I think it's a fallacious argument that you're making there in the hopes that continues to be true. There are too many great minds in this room thinking of the next disruptive thing that is going to unseat Skype from the top of the world of VoIP. There has never been a chat platform that lasted for more than a decade. Anybody still using AOL Instant Messenger? How about ICQ? I saw one hand for AOL Instant Messenger, all right. Every time there's going to be somebody out there, whether it's Viber or WhatsApp, who's coming after you to think about that, and that's the paranoia that I think you have to embrace. In order to see that next generation of things coming, I think there are two approaches that we can take to see the next wave of what will ultimately be the determination of a lot of successive businesses and the products that they offer. On the left-hand side is sort of the marketer's wet dream, as I describe it, where we all go out and we spend all this time on market requirements and understanding the customer. I've never, in the last 12 years in Silicon Valley, had a company come to me and say, hey, we did all of this, and now we just need to find some engineers to go build the solution to this problem. And on the right-hand side is the way that I've done it, that I think I've seen it done almost 80% of the time of the engineers have built some really awesome piece of technology, and they're wondering what it could do to make money. Somewhere in between this combination of things is a means of building the right types of products for the right occasion. If you only take the approach on the left-hand side, I don't think we're ever going to see disruptive type of thinking, because a lot of times it starts with a piece of technology that somebody's built. But on the right-hand side, it can be pieces of technology that never actually end up in market solving a problem or becoming a business. I work with a company right now who talked to me, they came to me and they're like, we have built the only interactive augmented reality 3D platform in the world. Sweet. What are we going to do with that? They're like, well, you could play Battleship in a 3D model. Okay, how much does it cost? $2,200. It's a pretty sweet game of Battleship. We might have to find some other way to thinking about that. In order to marry these two approaches, I think we need to ask ourselves 5 questions. And to me, this is the essence of business flow. The way that we answer these questions in a systemic way in order to put together the answer to a customer problem that builds a great business. The first one is, who is the customer that we're actually servicing, and do they have enough money to pay us for something? This was one of the biggest problems that we had with Skype was over and over again, the people who used it most were folks in internet cafes who couldn't even afford to pay us $1 a month. Pretty hard to build a billion-dollar business on a $1 a month type of payment. From a value proposition perspective, this is really, I think, where you can determine if you can solve that person's problem in a unique way. And once you figure out the answer to that, it usually tells you pretty distinctly what are the products that you need to go build into your portfolio and the pieces of technology you can leverage in order to have a completely defensible product strategy and position. How are we going to translate those into a profit model where does the customer really want to pay $1,500 every time they transact with you around a piece of hardware or device? Absolutely not. Device as a service is already there in almost every enterprise that exists. It just exists in a different sort of leasing model right now. And that's going to be coming to the consumer world soon enough. You're not going to pay $500, even subsidized for your phone, soon enough. You just pay the monthly fee the way that T-Mobile has started but hasn't really gotten all the way to market. How are we going to do all of these things in such a way that it can't be replicated? Is that IP and litigation protection? Or are these other ways that we can prevent that we can prevent our competitors from following us? A lot of times everybody wanted the answer to this to be the network effect. But the network effect is diminishing over and over again because distribution is so much easier through app stores and the web. And then finally, there are plenty of businesses who have answered each of those first 4 elements with Me Too type answers. Whole Foods, Kroger, even Gillette to some extent, right? But they ultimately ended up executing the concepts so much better than everybody else because they built an organization to do so effectively. If you can answer those 5 questions in a way that is consistent across them, I think you can take your products into building a truly competitive business that is the financial value that's out there. Just to be clear, for example, if your differentiation is low cost, you can't build a big onshore manufacturing plant and organization. That's what I mean by saying you have to think through them in a system of things. So with that, I just want to offer a couple of ideas that we threw out to Skype as we both were working on the business, selling the business to Microsoft, and even purchasing the business. Has anybody ever sent a text message via Skype? Awesome. 2 people. That's really pretty good. Have you ever gotten a text message via Skype? No. Why not? Did you get a text message via Skype?
I sent it to myself so my money wouldn't expire.
I didn't put accounting up there as a puzzle piece, but it really matters whether or not you expire people's the money they've deposited with you. So that is one way you could get a text message from Skype. No one else can ever get a text message from Skype because we never built inbound SMS. In 2008 and 2009, we were in an ongoing argument about our product roadmap between the idea of building group video calling. Anybody ever made a group video call on Skype? Okay, but we got about 4, so that's pretty good, versus the free SMS platform of inbound outbound. If we had built that inbound outbound SMS platform at that time as opposed to group video calling, how different might the outcome of Skype have been? And don't get me wrong, we were pretty successful, right? We sold for $8.5 billion to Microsoft. WhatsApp sold for $19 billion. That was the difference between understanding the marriage of technology with the customer need in order to find those things. At the same time, we were watching all of this enterprise and commercial world explode in terms of video conferencing. So Skype's revenue is obviously highly concentrated, and every one of those tends to be a small business using it for a Citrix-like purpose or a Join Me purpose. But we never built an enterprise and commercial offering. We didn't work through the security and all the elements of our product portfolio to do that. But we could have too. Citrix is a $5 billion company right now. Finally, and what I probably was most passionate about at the time was the idea that we could have delivered distributed services. Why in the world do you have to be sitting next to the guy who's giving you geometry lessons? We could do that on an SDK platform where we put an app on top of Skype that could actually, research showed, be more effective than having somebody sitting next to you because you could interact with the technology in different ways. Hangouts has done this, PopExpert has done this, Live Ninja has done this. We actually had a prototype running in Europe that had 500,000 small businesses signed up to it. Now, unfortunately, a lot of those were illicit businesses, but we were still experimenting and on our way. Think if we had stuck with that and we were the default for that world as well as video comms, as well as SMS. All I'm saying is that it's always super easy to criticize businesses for not seeing the future that's out there, and any of the techniques that I'm suggesting today don't guarantee you anything whatsoever. It's all about the ability to increase the probability that you catch the next wave by combining all of the stuff that we're talking about today, the strategic thinking, experimentation, lean development practices, and the agility to alter your behavior. Thanks very much.